Inside ADX Florence, the Alcatraz of the Rockies. Chapter 1, The Silence That Screamed. The night air in Colorado's high desert was razor-sharp, slicing through the silence that draped over the town of Florence. From a distance, ADX Florence looked like nothing more than a cluster of low, tan buildings scattered across barren land. No barbed wire visible from afar, no towers looming like vultures, just an illusion of calm. But those who knew called it something else, the Alcatraz of the Rockies. Inside, men who had once terrorized nations, cities, and entire cartels now lived in silence. For 23 hours a day, their world was a concrete box. No contact, no whispers, no escape. The prison's walls had a reputation stronger than steel. Nobody leaves ADX Florence alive. But that reputation was about to be tested. It started with the death of a man the world had almost forgotten. His name was Vincent "Viper" Morales, a former cartel lieutenant extradited from Mexico in 2010. Viper had run cocaine routes through the deserts of Arizona, orchestrated murders across the border, and bribed enough officials to make himself untouchable. That was until the DA caught him in a sting and sealed his fate with a life sentence. For 15 years, Viper said nothing. He served his time in silence, buried inside the special housing unit. No interviews, no letters, no visits. His name faded from headlines. But one cold morning, guards found him dead, lying face up on the narrow concrete bed in his cell. The official report was brief, apparent suicide, yet the details were all wrong. Suicide at ADX Florence was not impossible, but rare. Inmates were watched with a precision bordering on obsession. The cameras, the steel doors, the daily checks. Every moment was accounted for. And Morales? He hadn't been flagged as suicidal. He hadn't even filed complaints. His legal appeals were ongoing and his commissary account had been unusually active. He'd ordered new sneakers, toiletries, and even a radio just a week before his death. Something didn't add up. Special Agent Daniel Cross of the FBI was called in. Cross was a man who had seen enough of the underworld to know that silence often spoke louder than screams. He stood in the sterile cell that morning, staring at Morales's body, and the first thing he noticed was the position of the bedsheet. Too neat, too controlled, as if someone wanted it to look like a suicide. He leaned closer, spotting faint bruises across the inmate's wrists, marks that didn't match the ligature. Someone had restrained him. Cross turned to the warden. "This wasn't suicide," he said quietly. The warden's jaw tightened. "Agent Cross, you're standing in the most secure prison in the United States. No one gets in. No one gets out. If Morales is dead, he did it himself." But Cross wasn't convinced. Morales's death sent ripples through the prison population. Even in isolation, news traveled. Inmates who hadn't spoken in years suddenly began filing grievances, scribbling cryptic warnings on scraps of paper handed to guards. One message, written in jagged block letters, read, "He talked. Now he's dead." Cross pushed deeper, combing through Morales's files. There it was, buried in a sealed transcript. Morales had been cooperating. Not openly, not in court, but behind closed doors, he had whispered secrets about a cartel money laundering pipeline that stretched from Mexico to New York. Billions moved in silence, hidden in shell companies and offshore accounts. And Morales had been the first to map the trail. If he had been killed, it wasn't just a prison matter. It was international. But how? ADX Florence was built to be escape-proof, tamper-proof, murder-proof. Cells had solid steel doors with small windows. Inmates never touched each other. Recreation yards were individual cages. Meals were passed through slots. To kill Morales, someone had to break rules that were thought unbreakable. Cross interviewed guards one by one. Their answers were rehearsed, mechanical, like soldiers reading from a manual. No one saw anything unusual. No one heard a sound. Cameras captured nothing but Morales pacing his cell the night before. Then one guard, Rookie Officer Aaron Delaney, hesitated. His eyes darted before he answered. Cross caught it immediately. "You saw something?" Cross pressed. Delaney swallowed hard. I heard voices." "Voices?" "Yes. From Morales's cell. Around 2 a.m. I was doing rounds." He wasn't alone. Cross froze. It was impossible. Inmates were never together, never allowed to share a cell. Yet Delaney was adamant. Someone was inside. When Cross checked the logs, he found something chilling. At exactly 2 a.m., the surveillance cameras in Morales's corridor went black for 97 seconds. No explanation. No warning. 97 seconds. Long enough for a man to die. Cross's instincts screamed conspiracy. But who had the power to cut cameras inside ADX Florence? It had to be someone on the inside. A guard. An administrator. Maybe even someone higher. As he traced the failure, he stumbled onto a hidden access system. An override code buried deep in the prison's digital network. Only a handful of people knew it existed. Morales' death wasn't just a crime. It was a message. The deeper he dug, the darker it grew. A month before Morales' death, 3 wire transfers had been flagged by Treasury investigators. They originated from shell companies linked to the Sinaloa cartel, but passed through accounts tied to a Colorado investment firm. That firm's biggest investor? A retired federal corrections official. Someone had been protecting the money. And Morales had cracked the secret. Cross wasn't alone in his suspicions. Inside the prison, whispers grew. A notorious inmate, known only as the Ghost, a former intelligence officer convicted of treason, sent Cross a handwritten note through his attorney. It read, "Morales was silenced. You're next if you keep digging. The walls don't just keep men in, they keep secrets buried." The threat was real. Cross knew it. And yet he couldn't stop. Because the last piece of evidence he uncovered made his blood run cold. Morales had left behind a coded notebook. It was hidden in the lining of his prison-issued sneakers, discovered only after a second, deeper search. Inside were names, dates, and transactions, evidence of a cartel financial network operating under the noses of U.S. officials. But one name stood out among the rest. A name that should have been untouchable. A name belonging to someone inside ADX Florence. When Cross read it, his hands trembled. Because if the notebook was right, Morales hadn't been betrayed by the cartel. He'd been betrayed by the very people sworn to keep him locked away. And now Cross had to decide, expose the name and risk his life, or bury the truth forever. What he didn't know was that Morales' death was just the beginning. Because the next morning, another inmate was found dead. The betrayal within. The second death shattered any illusion that Vincent Viper Morales' death had been an isolated incident. This time, it was Malik Havers, a former white-collar criminal turned informant, locked away for orchestrating one of the largest insider trading schemes in American history. Havers wasn't violent, he wasn't connected to cartels, yet he shared one thing with Morales. He had been quietly cooperating with federal investigators. His body was found slumped against the corner of his cell, eyes wide open, mouth frozen mid-gasp as if he'd seen his killer. The autopsy revealed poison, traces of a chemical compound so rare it wasn't supposed to exist outside of government labs. 2 men dead. Both informants. Both silenced. Agent Daniel Cross stared at the crime scene photographs, while rising in his throat. ADX Florence was supposed to be impregnable. Yet someone was killing inmates under maximum lockdown. What chilled him most was the message left behind. In Havers' cell, scratched faintly into the paint near the floor, were 2 words, "Stay silent." Cross knew then that he wasn't facing a simple prison conspiracy. He was staring into a machine built on fear, secrets, and power. Someone inside the system wanted the truth buried, forever. The FBI moved quickly, tightening security, running background checks on every guard, administrator, and contractor. But the deeper Cross looked, the murkier it became. 3 guards had recently taken sudden, early retirements. 2 administrators had transferred out just weeks before Morales' death. Their financial records were scrubbed clean, but Cross's gut told him they'd been bought. Then came the bombshell. One of the names in Morales' hidden notebook matched an active prison staffer, Lieutenant David Kane. Kane was a decorated officer, respected, with 15 years at ADX. To his colleagues, he was the model of discipline. But according to the coded ledger, Kane had received payments routed through offshore accounts, payments that coincided with high-profile inmate deaths. Cross stared at the evidence, disbelief and anger colliding. If Kane was involved, it meant the unthinkable. ADX Florence wasn't just a prison. It was a chessboard where lives were pieces, moved and eliminated at will. Cross requested an interview with Kane. The lieutenant walked in calmly, crisp uniform, expression unreadable. He sat across from Cross, folding his hands neatly on the table. "You think I had something to do with Morales?" Kane asked, his voice smooth, almost mocking. "I think you're the only one who could have," Cross shot back. "The cameras go down, guards look the other way, an inmate dies and your bank account swells. You want to explain that?" Kane's lips curled into the faintest smile. "Careful, Agent Cross. Accusing the wrong man in this place can be dangerous." "Is that a threat?" Kane leaned forward. "It's a warning. There are forces in this prison you don't understand. Morales knew. Evers knew. And now you know. But knowledge doesn't save you here, it buries you. For a brief moment, Kane's eyes flickered with something darker than fear, something closer to satisfaction. Cross left the room shaken but resolved. He needed proof, undeniable proof, before Kane slipped away like the others. That night, he combed through thousands of hours of surveillance footage, searching for irregularities. That's when he saw it, Kane, during one of his late-night patrols, entering restricted corridors without logging entry. 97 seconds here. 120 seconds there. Always around the time cameras conveniently glitched. But the footage didn't just show Kane. It showed him meeting someone. The second figure's face was obscured, but the outline was clear. A senior administrator. Someone with the authority to override every safeguard in ADX. The next day, Cross confronted the warden. He laid out the evidence, the patterns, the footage. The warden listened in silence, his weathered face betraying nothing. When Cross finished, the warden leaned back and said quietly, "You're in over your head, Agent." What's that supposed to mean? It means ADX was never just about locking men up. It's about control. Some of these inmates hold secrets that could topple governments, cartels, corporations. If a few of them have to disappear to keep the bigger system intact, then that's what happens. Cross stared at him, stunned. "Are you saying the government sanctioned this?" The warden didn't answer. He only said, "You've seen too much. Walk away before you're next." But Cross couldn't walk away. Morales's notebook burned in his mind, the names, the dates, the evidence of betrayal. If he let it go, 2 men's deaths would mean nothing. He reached out to Morales's old cartel contacts, hoping to confirm the money trails. What he found nearly broke him. The offshore accounts weren't just cartel fronts. They were tied to American corporations, political donors, even defense contractors. The same system designed to imprison criminals was laundering their money. ADX Florence wasn't just a prison. It was a vault, guarding secrets too dangerous to ever see daylight. Cross arranged a clandestine meeting with a Justice Department official he trusted. He handed over copies of the notebook, the financial links, and the surveillance footage. For the first time, he felt a sliver of relief. Until the official didn't show up for their second meeting. 2 days later, the man's car was found at the bottom of a ravine. No skid marks, no witnesses, just another accident. Cross realized he was alone, and he was running out of time. The breaking point came when his own office was ransacked. Files shredded, computer wiped, Morales's original notebook gone. Someone had broken into a federal building and walked out with the most damning evidence of corruption inside ADX Florence. But whoever had come for the notebook had left behind a message, scrawled in red across his office wall. "You were warned." With everything collapsing, Cross made a desperate move. He went public. He leaked fragments of the story, names redacted, evidence hinted at, to a trusted journalist. Within days, whispers turned to headlines. "Death in the Rockies. Is America's most secure prison hiding dark secrets?" The Bureau tried to silence it, but the public wanted answers. Congressional hearings loomed. Pressure mounted. Kane was suspended, the warden quietly reassigned. For a moment, it seemed like the truth would finally break free. But then came the twist. 3 months later, as hearings prepared to open, another death rocked ADX. This time it wasn't an inmate. It was Lieutenant David Kane. Found in his home, a gun in his hand, and apparent suicide. The official report closed the case. The warden disappeared into retirement. The files were sealed. And just like that, the story of ADX Florence's secret machine vanished from the news cycle. Agent Cross left the Bureau soon after, disillusioned. He lived in silence, always looking over his shoulder, knowing the machine he'd glimpsed was still running. Because late one night, an unmarked envelope slid under his door. Inside was a single sheet of paper. No signature, no return address. On it, a list of names, politicians, CEOs, judges. At the very bottom, one final line written in the same jagged block letters Morales had once used. "The walls still bury secrets." Cross realized then that the Alcatraz of the Rockies wasn't just a prison. It was a shadow empire feeding on silence. And those who tried to uncover it never lasted long.